pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll.
Graham Cassoon.
Here.
Tobin.
Here.
Kleiner.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
John Francois.
Here.
Burr.
Here.
Green. Absent. Massey.
Here.
President Rodriguez.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Approval of minutes.
Tonight we have two council meeting minutes, one from May 18th, 2021, and January 19th, 2021.
So moved.
Motion by Massey, seconded by Alderman Johnson. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Public hearings and grievances.
Okay, tonight we have a public hearing on local law number 1 of 2021. Please take notice that the city of Middletown will hold a public hearing on local law number 1 of 2021 for opting out of the establishment of cannabis retail dispensary licenses and on-site consumption licenses within the city of Middletown. On Tuesday, June 15th, 2021, commencing at 8 p.m. in the Common Council Chambers, City Hall, second floor. A full version of the local law of 2001 of 2021 was available on the city website, middletown-ny.com. The public can attend the public hearing at City Hall, second floor, to discuss the local law. Any members of the public entering City Hall must have face masks. The meeting will also be conducted via video teleconference and live on Channel 20 for viewing, and members of the public may also access the meeting to ask questions by clicking on the link to register and digitally on the website. For any person unable to participate at the time of the meeting, email comments may be submitted in advance to the city clerk, and the email was there. Please note that all meetings will be recorded. This is by order of the Common Council, City of Middletown, John C. Nomchek, City Clerk, and this was published in the Times Herald Record on June 7th and June 8th, and the city website, and also on social media.
Okay, at this time, the public hearing is now open.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for acknowledging me to speak at the beginning of the meeting. I also want to thank Alderman Massey for introducing the local law on my behalf. As you know, that requires a council member to introduce. The proposal is mine, and so I'm here to present to the council and to the public what my position is. This discussion actually started a few weeks ago with the passage of the bill, and then more thoughtful discussion when I actually made the proposal to opt out. A lot of social media comments, and the many helpful, thoughtful, on both sides of the issue, many misperceptions, and of course, like in any discussion, some of it was just outright nonsense. But let's begin with what I'm proposing when I say that I would like the city to opt out of the law. As you know, we have until 12/31 of this year to opt out or to pass a local law that would remove the city of Middletown from the retail and the on-site consumption of marijuana within city boundaries. If the city does not opt out by then, we are then forever committed to staying in and acknowledge that regardless of the future regulations or changes in regulations, there will be nothing the city can do. If the city does opt out at any time in the future, we can opt back in. So just from a purely practical point of view, it only makes sense for any community to opt out of this legislation until the rules are established, until the guidelines are passed, until we know what impacts or potential revenue projections and all the things that come supposedly with this law, all the benefits. Nothing is proven, nothing is documented, no laws, no establishment of the Cannabis Control Board guidelines and rules. So there are a lot of what ifs out there. But on the same thing, if the public would look, is looking for, if there's an overwhelming support of the public, then they would have the opportunity to do a permissive referendum, which I will address in a few minutes. At the same time, it's understandable that there's a lot of confusion about it. I know there are advocates on both sides, very strong opinions, and but in regards to the opt-in and opt-out, I wanted to also make it clear that you can opt out of one or both. You can opt out of the on-site retail or the on-site cafe-style consumption. Some of the questions that came about in a good part of some of the social media dialogue was that Middletown is opting out of the use of marijuana within the city of Middletown. Not true. We don't have the ability to do that under the law, and so it's an absolute false statement. You can still cultivate your own under the law. You can purchase and consume at any legitimate dispensary and medical marijuana store. And Middletown, people who live in Middletown are not exempt from that. Medical marijuana is not regulated at all under this option of Middletown opting out. The opt-out law only addresses retail, as I said, and cafes, and we have the issues of local control. There's a second part to the resolution that I've also introduced that is not part of the public hearing, but it's related to this, and that is the public consumption part. This law does create, for the first time in the United States, from what I've been able to research, at this point, we would be the first state that will allow public consumption. So anywhere you can smoke tobacco, you can smoke marijuana. And I believe that's a danger to the quality of life in our community. The second part of the law, or the other law that I propose, where we can identify publicly owned property and prohibit all smoking on that property. We do that now with some of our parks, and under this law, in consultation with our corporation counsel, Alex Smith, who's here tonight, we believe that we can extend that to a certain area around public areas also, especially where kids congregate. This is not part, as I said, of the opt-out law and will be required to have a separate vote, but I believe is equally as important for the quality of life in our city. I'm not sure that even advocates of this law would say that it would be appropriate for someone to be smoking marijuana in front of kids at the skate park, 10 feet away on the sidewalk, or any other public property or on the street. I'm interested to hear tonight how they try to avoid that with the public consumption part, and maybe some people, maybe I'm wrong, maybe they don't care. All I know is that I have a 7-year-old grandson, and if I'm sitting or standing in a corner in downtown Middletown, and I have a group of people smoking pot on the sidewalk, I'm not going to come back into downtown Middletown. I'm going to find another place to patronize. And I think you're going to find that in a lot of downtowns, not just downtown Middletown. I think you're going to see it in downtown Goshen. You're going to see it in downtown Newburgh. You're going to see it in downtowns all over this state, because that's the experience that we've had in other states in this country. Colorado, for example, did start with public consumption and quickly changed their mind because of the public outcry. So I don't have the answer exactly of how you would control that public consumption other than making it illegal. So California and Colorado are the two states that most people refer to as a success. And as I mentioned, they both prohibit smoking in public. New York will not. But in Colorado, which of course was one of the first, or maybe the first state to go with the making marijuana legal, 67% of the local jurisdictions have banned recreational marijuana. Maybe some, and the way I read the report, I believe that same percentage have also banned medical marijuana. And let me make it clear, I'm not trying to ban medical marijuana. I supported it. I supported it and by writing to Albany on behalf of people and individuals who required it. So this is not an issue about medical marijuana. This is an issue about opting in or opting out of a law here in the city, state law, and with public consumption in our streets. So I don't support the public consumption part of the marijuana, period. I can't be convinced on that. I think it's horrible for our quality of life. And I think if we don't do something and we're forced to deal with this, I think it will be damaging to our community. I ask those people who support that law, and I try to personalize it, as I mentioned, when I speak to them about how would they like their child or their grandchild to be dealt with in that type of setting. And again, I'm hoping for an answer tonight in regards to that from one of the advocates of this law. We all know the pluses and minuses of the law, but I'd like to know what the impacts or the potential impacts on how they see it and how they see public consumption on our streets as a good thing. Me personally, I don't care what you do in your home. I don't care who you marry. I don't care how much marijuana you smoke. That's not my business. That's your business. My business is quality of life and protecting kids, protecting our community, and as we move forward, what's in the best interest from my perspective as the elected mayor for the city of Middletown. Again, medical marijuana and home consumption not impacted at all by the city opting out. And I think that's an important part to remember. You will be allowed to possess up to 3 ounces of marijuana on your person and 24 grams of cannabis concentrate outside of your home. That's a lot. You can have up to 6 mature plants and 6 immature plants per household. Also a lot. I believe you can have up to 5 pounds of cultivated marijuana in your household if you have 2 or more people, 2 or more adults in a household. That's a lot. Whether I agree with them or disagree with any of those things has nothing to do with opting out. The most important part of the legislation has been the record expungement, not the retail sale of marijuana. This is probably, as I said, the most important part of the law with the most devastating impact on Black and brown communities. They have been prosecuted at a rate of 3 to 4 times more than white folks in regards to marijuana. And this is the real benefit of this law, not retail sales. Selling marijuana, marketing marijuana into Black and brown communities, to me, from my viewpoint, is not the panacea. It's not going to bring about success. It's not going to bring about, and if you read the Colorado report, which is available and we will be making available online, it will devastate you, the impact on young people after you read it and what's happening out there. I did mention earlier the term permissive referendum. If the city opts out, the public then can seek to have it placed on the ballot in November. One question to me was, well, why don't you just place it on a referendum for yourselves by the city? We can't do that. The law was structured in a way, and I would love to do that, to be honest with you. I think it would go down in an overwhelming fashion, but I don't know. So the only way this matter can be decided by the public, and whether you're for it or against it, and the state law passed it and has allowed marijuana consumption, whether you're for it or against it, would be to put it up for a public referendum. The only way to get to a public referendum through this law is by opting out. Then the supporters of marijuana, cannabis use, can then go out and seek and get petitions. I believe it's about 10% of those who voted in the gubernatorial election. There's Board of Election rules. And they can force it to a referendum this November. What's wrong with that? If there's such a public outcry for this, do your work, just like all of us have to do when we go out and get on the ballot. That's how we run for office. We run for office by going out, getting petitions, going door to door, talking to people, convincing them that we deserve the opportunity to be on the ballot and have an opportunity to vote for or against us. You can do the same thing. You can get organized. You can go out and get that 10% signatures that are required, and then you can have a referendum this November. Now, the interesting part is the way they structured the permissive referendum is the same applies if the city opts out and then at some point opts back in. Then those who oppose marijuana in the city, the cafes and the dispensaries, can also force it to referendum. So if you're looking at it from a fairness perspective, opt out is the only way to go. Many made comparisons to alcohol. And alcohol sales, especially on premise, are regulated, as I said, by the New York State Liquor Authority. And we have the Cannabis Control Board. That's, I forgot to do my clicker. The Cannabis Control Board, which has yet to have any regulations. So when you have a liquor license, you know what the regulations are. You know how to operate, your community knows how to operate, your police department knows how to enforce, and there are rules and regulations. The Cannabis Control Board has yet to form those regulations. Nothing has been made public, at least as of a few days ago. So it certainly raises the question of how does the city deal with a licensee who is in violation, and what are they violating, especially when no rules have been established by the board. New York State did an assessment of potential impact study in July of 2018. It's not like this just passed recently. This is 3 years old. Why haven't they put together and formulated regulations and rules on how the Cannabis Board would operate? I don't know what they're holding back on. So therefore, the opt-in and opt-out time clock should not start until those rules and regulations are put in place. Then the public in all communities throughout New York State will have an opportunity to examine it and see what's good and what's bad about the bill, what they like, what they don't like. How do you create a $2.5 billion industry, which is projected, in New York State and not have rules and regulations on how it's going to be governed? In addition, for those who keep saying, well, you have a liquor license. Well, I do not have a liquor license. My wife does. So let's correct that. But you cannot walk out of my wife's restaurant drinking a scotch and water and go down Main Street. That's a violation of New York State liquor law. And who would enforce that? Not only the local police, but the New York State Liquor Authority. What are the rules in regards to this? It's apparent for me that without the rules, one can draw the conclusion that if it's illegal to smoke out on the street, you can go into a cafe or on-site consumption and leave in that same manner. So they're smoking marijuana. So it doesn't appear to be any prohibition from going in and then walking to your car and smoking marijuana until you get actually physically into the car. The chief, I'm sure, will address the driving while impaired issues and how the fact that there is no measurement where the state or the police, when they pull you over, can actually measure if you're driving while impaired. In the law, it says the New York State Department of Health will work with institutions of higher education to conduct studies and research designed to evaluate methodologies and technologies for the detection of cannabis impaired driving. Well, after one of your kids or one of your family members is involved in an accident with someone who has a DWI, you're pretty damn happy that that person will be prosecuted. What guarantees do we have that this will be the same standard for marijuana consumption? There's no test similar to breathalyzer, and more importantly, how do we prevent it? There's no test for the breathalyzer, and this should be a concern to anyone who is advocating this increased usage, because there will be increased usage by the very design. It is now a marketable product. It is now a public product in which government is relying on taxes to pay for items in their budgets. It only makes sense that they're going to go out and market. They need new customers. They want to recruit. Look at the Colorado report and see how people were recruited and people were directed and targeted and sales were made in those areas to generate funds for the business and to generate revenue for the state. Look at the offsets of what it cost the state for every dollar that was raised, how much they had to lay out in other areas. And it's mind-blowing. Others had zoning concerns. Experts in this field, and I put some of this stuff, most of it online, have written many papers on this very topic. It's clear that the zoning limitations cannot make the legal operation of a licensed retail dispensary or cafe on site so difficult that it becomes impractical. So we can't zone it in the heavy factory area where no people are. and allow for the only use in that area. It's spelled out, there's a paper spelled out, which we'll be providing online by a law firm of Keene and Beans, summary. And don't forget, Middletown is only 5 square miles. And we have several churches, and we have several schools. The law prohibits the establishment of a retail establishment or an on-site consumption establishment within 500 feet of a school and within 200 feet of a church. And of the school, it's a school property. So not the school building, the school property. Some said, well, let's put it downtown. That's the best. One person mentioned, well, they can have munchies and whatever they get when they smoke pot, and that'll be good for the restaurant business. Probably said in jest, maybe, I don't know. But the reality is that it won't be located downtown. The reality is that based on the standards that are in the law, they're looking for high traffic areas. They're looking for parking. There's going to be many standards that are going to be coming out that are going to address the locations of these facilities. They're not like getting a liquor license. They're going to be limited. I believe the standard is about 1 per 7,000 people. So these are not going to be all over the place for people to go in and consume. But if you're a resident here and you believe that, well, the simple solution is to allow it to go downtown, I think what you're ignoring is, because you don't want it in your neighborhood, you're ignoring the fact that downtown is a neighborhood. It's a neighborhood of many residents, many businesses, many people make a living down here. And the targeting, if you believe we're going to target this in downtown, I think you're mistaken. But that burden's going to go on the council if we don't opt out. If you're going to allow it, it's up to you folks. I'm waiting for each and every one of you to tell me which zones you want this allowed in. Because you can't say, I want it downtown. You can't say, I just want it in commercial zone in Jude's ward, but I don't want it in Paul's ward. That's not the choice. Our commercial zones are scattered throughout the city. In fact, the regulations that are in place indicate that anywhere a restaurant or a liquor license is allowed, you should allow this. And that would cover a good part of the city and most of the commercial zones. So my last point would be the projected revenue side. You would think that there would be a study done to indicate how much money would be generated by an on-site cafe or a dispensary, and they don't. But 40% of the revenues are going to go to education, and so did the lottery money. There's no rule in here that says that the increase, that there's going to be a base number of lottery, of education aid, and that this money is going to be over and above that. This money will be directed into education aid, but there's no guarantee that it's in addition to current education aid numbers. I believe 20% is going to go towards some type of fund to, the other 40% I believe is going towards a fund to help members of the Black and brown community to get into this type of business. That, to me, personally, is a pretty offensive statement. That, to me, it's not a panacea for the Black and brown community. Opening up a marijuana retail distillery or on-site consumption in your neighborhood, targeting your kids for this product, is not the panacea. It's not the way out. The way out is education and opportunity. And being one of 4 in a community of 30,000 with an opportunity to open up this type of facility, to me, is not the opportunity that we should be directing towards our kids. So I'm hoping that the council will opt out. I believe it's the right thing to do in a practical sense. I think it's the right thing to do logistically, that we can always opt back in. We can all have our individual beliefs on whether it's good for the city or bad for the city, but we don't know the hard facts yet. And until the hard facts come in, we should be opting out of this legislation. And I believe that there's going to be many speakers after me. Probably many will disagree. But just keep in mind is that ultimately you folks are going to be the ones making the decision where these facilities will be located, not me. That's your goal. My goal is to opt out. If it doesn't work, I don't have a say in the changing of the zoning code. That's your call, and keep that in mind. Thank you very much. I take any questions if you have.
Any questions for the mayor? Thank you, Mayor. Police Chief.
Good evening, Council. So, I'm going to speak just basically on the public safety issues. I'd like to start off just advising everyone that on a regular basis, we field calls from members of the community asking why they have to smell other people's marijuana smoke. What can they do about it? So I know there's a large portion of the community that supports it, but there's also a large portion of the community that does not support that. We don't take calls from members of the community asking, why people are bothering them about smoking marijuana. It's the opposite way. The mayor referenced several times this evening a report from Colorado. And we also heard about the shortcomings in the law. We don't have real definitive laws as of right now, or guidelines as to what could or couldn't happen. So with that being said, we have to refer to the statistics and the research that's been done in other states. And one of the best reports that I've seen so far is the report. It's called The Legalization of Marijuana in Colorado, The Impact. It was published in September of 2020, so it's fairly new, fairly up to date. Marijuana was legalized for recreational purposes in Colorado in 2013. So there's quite a bit of data in this report. It's 50-some pages. It is available online, 59 pages. And just to highlight a couple of the things that Colorado's already experienced with the legalization of marijuana. And again, they don't have public consumption. As the mayor stated, they started off with public consumption but quickly changed it. Since they've introduced public consumption of marijuana, or legalization of marijuana, Colorado's seen an increase in traffic deaths where drivers tested positive for marijuana. It increased by 135% from 2013 through 2020. It's pretty significant. It equates to a person killed every 3.5 days compared in 2019 compared to one person killed every 6.5 days in 2013. Again, very significant. I don't want to see anybody killed by anything. So if we can minimize the impacts on our community, all the better. Also, when we talk about traffic safety, the mayor touched on something very important. Our government body started discussing this in 2018, and there's been really no guidelines set forth with the police department, or law enforcement, I should say, as far as enforcement efforts. With alcohol, there are per se levels. There's a tremendous amount of research that went into that to determine that someone at a 0.08% blood alcohol level is per se intoxicated. There's been no quantitative measure put on THC as of right now. I know there is some discussion about it could be around an 0.5, thereabouts, depends on the THC level. There's a national discussion going on right now in highway traffic safety to reduce the blood alcohol content per se level from 0.08 to 0.5. So when I hear someone say that it could be only around an 0.5, that's pretty dangerous to me. That means that they're intoxicated. But the real issue I find is, what is the level of THC in someone's blood, in their body, that impairs them? We don't know that yet. There's no specific research that says that. So on an enforcement level, how do we determine that? How do we keep the members of this community and the visitors of this community safe when we have no enforcement mechanism right now for THC? Some of the other things that popped out in the Colorado report, I don't want to go through all the different statistics. I mean, it's definitely worth a read. Here's a quick one, just a reference. Cannabis use increases the risks of being involved in an auto accident 1.5 to 2 times someone that's not using cannabis. Again, we just about double the risk of accident under the use of cannabis. Going a little bit further outside of the traffic safety, youth. As far back as I can remember, there's been a tremendous amount of effort put into reducing smoking, vaping, those types of campaigns to reduce that in our youth. Colorado statistics show that once marijuana became legal in Colorado, the use amongst their youth skyrocketed. So again, that's our future. The mayor spoke several times about how we perceive our own family around people smoking marijuana. I think these statistics speak volumes, and they speak for themselves, so that whether we utilize it in a dispensary here locally or retail locations, we do have an issue that we have to look at with the youth. The criminal law, actually with the new sections pertaining to cannabis, also left out a section in regards to people under the age of 21. If they are found to be in possession or using cannabis, there's no mechanism for us right now to address that, other than possibly taking them home to their parents. But someone that's 20 years old, it's not going to go very well when we try to take them home to their parents. It's supposed to be civil penalty that's brought before the Cannabis Board, but as we heard, that board doesn't exist yet, and we don't know when it's going to exist. Something else that we should consider on the public health topic is marijuana exposures. Since the legalization of marijuana in Colorado in 2013, they saw a tremendous increase in exposures. About 2 years ago, I attended a training class which was presented by a representative from Colorado, and she actually explained to us that the levels of THC in the commercial marijuana business are extremely high, higher than what we've seen in years past. The market is to get the higher THCs. There's different variations of it, but in doing so, there is the ability to have adverse impacts on the person. Someone that's smoking something that's very highly concentrated in THC, it may be their first time, it may be something different, it may have an adverse reaction on them. So they're seeing a tremendous increase in people having to get treatment for marijuana exposure, whether it's in their local hospitals, mental health facilities, whatever it may be. There is definitely an impact on that as well. And again, this isn't stuff that I'm just pulling out of the air. This is a well-documented research paper that has a lot of statistics in it. Something very important, and I know this has been a hot topic, especially with the police department, with the whole criminal justice reform, is mental health. Statistics also show that there's a tremendous increase in the mental health. And when they refer to or reference people that have either attempted or committed suicide, there has been a drastic increase since 2013 in Colorado of those individuals that have some form of THC in their system at that time. Again, alarming statistics. And then another one that I hear quite often is if it becomes illegal and there's dispensaries and cafes to utilize it, it's going to reduce the black market. That couldn't be further from the truth. Remember, these dispensaries and cafes are going to be taxing people. The law doesn't differentiate between possessing marijuana that came from a dispensary or a cafe. It just says you're allowed to possess up to 3 ounces. There's no way for the police, law enforcement, to determine where that marijuana came from. It's going to fuel the black market, legalizing it. And I know that's something separate than what we're actually talking about today here with the local law, but these are things that we have to take into consideration, because along with that comes some other property and violent crimes. And again, in the report from Colorado, you can see that from 2013 going forward, they saw a pretty significant increase in their crime, both violent and property crimes. The other thing that I thought was interesting in the actual criminal procedure law on 222 is the law allows for someone to have up to 5 pounds of homegrown cannabis. How do we determine on the law enforcement end if that 5 pounds is homegrown or purchased or acquired some other way? There's still no mechanism for that either. So there's some issues that I feel have to be addressed on the criminal justice end, on the enforcement end. And I personally think by allowing the dispensaries within the city, we're going to increase the risks to our public, increase the risk to our children, our traffic safety. I truly feel that we're going to see an increase in crime associated with it. And I'm not sure if that is the risks that we want to take as a community. As I said, we get more calls about why is this allowed than we do about why don't we allow it. Any questions for me?
Alderman Massey.
Chief, I read that report, or I read through it, and there was another report, and I'm not sure if it was the Colorado, that the impact financially, because a lot of people are saying, well, we'll make a lot of money from the taxes from the sale, but what about the impact to the police department financially?
That's to be determined. Obviously, as crime rises, if it does rise, if there's additional requirements put on the police department as a result of this, there's going to be additional expenditures. The class that I mentioned before that I attended, their statistics showed that for every dollar that came in revenue, it cost that municipality $3 in services. So again, that's from a municipality that's already doing this. It's not brand new. They've been established. They've been up and running for since 2013. So we do have to learn from history. We have to learn from other people's situations. So I think that says a lot right there. There will be an impact on our public safety and the resources of the police department.
Anyone else have any questions for the chief? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
This time, we're going to open up to the public. We have our first person. I ask everybody to be respectful. 3 minutes. And if you would like, if you live in the city of Middletown, let us know where, what ward, or what street you live on.
Hi, my name is Juan Ayala. I am a resident of the city of Middletown, homeowner in Ward 4. And I'm basically here to tell the council to vote no to local law number 1 and not opt out. Starting on June 1st, the Stefano made it very clear his stance for opting out. And one of his concerns was that smoking cannabis is going to be legal anywhere it's legal to smoke cigarettes. And people are going to act stupid, they're going to flaunt it. And that might be true, but I don't really think so. You're going to have to trust the people here, because opting out doesn't change any of these facts. All his concerns won't change if you opt out. They could easily go to the next town over and get it. All these issues. If anything, you should be providing more choices for people. So instead of, okay, I got cannabis, I can go home or to a park. No, let them go to a cafe or a dispensary. Allow them to have more choices. Trust the people. Unfortunately, I didn't bring the stats from Colorado, but I think those stats are from 2018. I think the numbers are much better. I mean, I understand the issue of quality of life, but opting out is not going to change anything. I really think you need to start trusting the people and give them more choices. The other thing that the mayor quickly glossed over in the June 1st meeting is the city of Middletown will not be collecting hundreds of thousands in tax revenue. You know, if it's going to happen, if you're going to say, well, there might be some issues, we need more money in the police department. Well, you're not going to get any money if you have the town of Weba Yonder or is taxing everybody and has dispensaries all over the place. I think this is a fact. marijuana is legal in the state of New York. And all the issues you just brought up, and the mayor, the police chief, doesn't change that. It's going to happen. Now, there's a concern like, we have until December to, get the, we opt out and then we'll figure it out. This is not going to happen for 2 to 3 years. The state of New York says they're not going to be issuing licensing. I know the board's not there yet. It's going to be 2 to 3 years. You have 2 to 3 years to rezone parks, say no smoking, come up with new local laws for public. I mean, you have time to do it. So we have to get out of this old 70s Nixon thinking that marijuana is the evil plant. We just got to get out of that thinking, okay? I mean, the fact is, it's a plant, okay? It's just like coffee beans, and it's the law of the state. And I really think, I really recommend the council vote no to local law number 1, and that's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. May it please the council, my name is Daniel Donnelly. I reside in Amelia in northeastern Dutchess County, where mine is the honor to chair the Dutchess County Libertarian Party. Additionally, last summer I was elected to the Libertarian Party of New York State Committee to represent this Judicial District 9 in the Hudson Valley. Full disclosure, personally I do not consume cannabis, but through my associations with my constituency and colleagues, I can assure you, without having met you before, that you are surrounded by people who do. They are educators, artisans, artists, athletes, tradesmen, businessmen, clergy, attorneys, and even law enforcement. And you may be unaware of their consumption because they are no less productive than any other person. Marijuana or cannabis is, many studies show, no more criminogenic than anything else, which is to say that if you have a fool beforehand, the cannabis does not make the person any more so. So I hear a lot of alarmism and cynicism about Middletown passing this and authorizing dispensaries and such, but that will not be the case. This is New York State. We regulate anything which moves, and some things do not. So in 3 years, by the rollout, there will be the regulations to manage this safely. And this is why I've come to you to urge you not to vote on the ban, because the good people of Middletown deserve the dignity of the option for this and not to be stigmatized by having to go elsewhere to consume the cannabis. And that is why I've come to you. Thank you very much, then.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. My name is Alan Mclean. I actually don't own a house in Middletown now, but the first 2 homes I purchased were actually in Middletown. So I've been in the area a while. I actually live in the town of Wallkill now. I also don't consume cannabis, but I grew up in an era, the war on drug era, where I watched a lot of family, friends succumb to drug use, succumb to incarceration, and to see that now's an opportunity to give back to those communities that were destroyed by the war on drugs, and the fact that you guys are considering opting out, and to hear a mayor say he's concerned about the quality of life when his wife owns a bar that has actually been linked to shootings and stabbings and things like that, is kind of sad to hear. but I'm also the president of a social justice group that has done a lot of work in the city of Middletown, in Tall Oaks, and Summitfield, David Moore Heights, Park Hill. And those communities could use this assistance. They can use this funding that the cannabis industry will bring here. And I don't know how familiar anyone here is with the geographical area, but the town of Wallkill surrounds Middletown. It's actually 65 square miles. And we're leaning towards not opting out. So what people can do is come into the town of Wallkill, consume cannabis, get in their car, and then drive into Middletown. So is that something that you want to do to your constituents, to put them in that predicament to where they have to make that decision when you can put places in your city and allow them to consume it here and take that revenue and give it back to these communities that have been so badly affected by the war on drugs? So there are a lot of people here that would like to be here, but due to having to work 2 and 3 jobs and being affected by the economic turmoil that they've been placed in because of things like the war on drugs, I hope that I could be a voice for them. And when you guys decide to vote, you think about the people that can't be here to vote because they're working 2 jobs. Thank you.
Michael? Gilfeather?
Thank you. I am Michael Gilfeather, President and CEO of Orange Bank and Trust, 212 Dolson Avenue, and I am here to support the local law for opting out of the establishment of cannabis retail dispensary licenses and on-site consumption licenses within the city of Middletown. The bank is the oldest and largest bank in Middletown and is very invested in the Middletown community. We have made thousands of loans over the years to businesses and individuals, and the quality of life in the city goes hand in hand with the value of homes and the attractiveness to do business in the city. Accordingly, I believe that prohibiting the sale of a product that is smoked and whose purpose for the user is to get high is not only in the best interest of overall public health, and it is a statement towards the higher standard of living within the entire city. So thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your leadership. I applaud you in your ongoing efforts to improve the business community and the quality of life for the entire city. Thank you.
Alexei?
Hi, my name is Alexei Fernandez. You politics are hypocrites. I mean, it's okay for the mayor to sell alcohol and make a lot of drunks, violent drunks, and for shootings and stabbings in the bars in Middletown, but weed, a drug a lot less harmful than the damaging effects of alcohol, shouldn't be allowed to be sold because the mayor doesn't want a city full of peaceful potheads. Well, it's already being sold and business is booming, so let's regulate it. Not only is it hypocritical to ban weed dispensaries, it's absolutely racist, which is no surprise under Mayor Joe's leadership, where we refuse to be a sanctuary city for the least of us. And last time I checked, Middletown Police, which I respect for their push to be progressive, was 90% white. However, we are truly a diverse community, and we deserve a government that represents its people inside and out. And we still have a civil service commissioner that still hasn't resigned despite repeated calls to step down due to failures in implementing fundamental changes to have the government represent the community it serves. It truly hurts my soul that instead of common sense policies and politicians that serve the community, we have crony partisan politicians who put power and money above truth and justice. So I'm begging the council to be better than it was years ago, months ago, weeks ago. Vote to regulate the market here. Also, I saw on the record that New York will launch fireworks across New York to mark the end of COVID-19 restrictions to honor essential workers, and I'm grateful. And I can't wait for the patriotism that we're about to display. Freedom instead of restrictions. Thank you, and God bless.
Good evening. Martin Harnick, 17 Sunnyside. I'm here to speak against the mayor's proposal. Seems to me we're not debating legalization tonight. That's already been done. And it also seems that once we decide to opt out, it's going to be really difficult to motivate people to opt in. Besides the loss of tax dollars, it doesn't seem that anybody's worried about the more than over 50 places in the city where kids are exposed to alcohol. From gas stations to drugstores to supermarkets to convenience stores, alcohol is all over the place, and we don't seem to mind that. I would also ask you to remember that more than 60% of the American population supports legalization. You represent them as well, and you owe them an opportunity to purchase their product legally. The bill seems to provide, and I've heard it described as a very progressive piece of legislation, opportunities for minority ownership, not exploitation. This would give minority owners an opportunity to build wealth and an investment in their communities. We have numerous people in Middletown who have no access to a car. Many of them are poor, they choose not to drive, they're elderly. Are they Ubering or taxiing to a dispensary out of town if they want to purchase their legal drug? And finally, it seems to me it's legal. We're going to have to live with whatever is created legally. And as the gentleman said before, having lived in New York my whole life, I am sure we will be up to our necks in legalization before anybody takes a step into a dispensary. Thank you.
Logan?
Good evening. I'm here today to express my concern with the proposed ban on recreational cannabis sales within the city of Middletown. I believe that a ban on the sale of recreational cannabis now is the wrong move for our community. Cannabis legalization and its sale are both a racial justice and an economic justice issue. The city of Middletown stands to generate over $100,000 a year in tax revenue annually from the sale of cannabis, which, as the council is aware, would mean $1 million over the course of the next decade. These funds could go to meaningful projects so that we can continue to enhance the quality of life for residents across our city. Affordable housing, public transportation investments, jobs and drug addiction treatment programs, among other things. Programs that our city currently needs to rely on the county, state, and federal government for funding. Many neighboring municipalities, both within and outside the county, are seeking to allow the sale of cannabis, while some are seeking to ban it. This will create an uneven share of tax revenue to be distributed throughout the region. Middletown will, in effect, lose out on potentially thousands more dollars that we could stand to receive. For many, the allowal of the sale of cannabis in Middletown seems like it is common sense. Some have taken issue with how the sale of cannabis can be effectively implemented in Middletown. While this is deserving of a serious and thorough discussion, a ban on cannabis sales now does not mean existing concerns about its impact on our quality of life are alleviated. In fact, I'd argue that a ban on the sale of cannabis would allow for these issues to proliferate. Without venues like cafes and lounges, there will be no centralized area for people who seek to use cannabis to consume it. Folks will continue to purchase cannabis from street dealers without knowing what exactly they're consuming and how it was cultivated. A ban on cannabis in Middletown is a ban on accountability. Middletown residents will be forced to spend their money in communities outside of our own and will almost certainly bring their purchase back to within our city so that they can consume it. This will happen regardless of a ban or not, and it is one of the most significant points for the council to consider when understanding the potential efficacy of such a ban. I want to ask two questions of the council for them to consider when making their decision. First, what does a ban say to the brown and black residents of our community who've been at the receiving end of the war on drugs and should reap the economic rewards of such a program? The second point is about the potential for a ballot initiative to legalize the sale of cannabis within the city should it be banned. What is the purpose in asking local residents to go to the polls to express their support when they already have overwhelmingly voiced their opinion at the polls in 2020 and 2018, voting for state officials who support the Mrta? Middletown has come a very long way in the last few years, and as a resident, I want to see my city continue to prosper. I ask the Common Council to oppose a ban on recreational cannabis so that we can continue to move our city forward and have the resources necessary to meaningfully enhance our quality of life. Thank you.
Figueroa?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I'm Ovid Figueroa, I owner of Serrano Roofing. I am a consumer of cannabis. I'd like to point a couple things out that were already said, though. You know, the opportunity for black and brown people to benefit from those tax dollars to open businesses, I don't believe is racist. I think to say that white people should be only people to operate these dispensaries is actually racist. As far as the study the chief was quoting, some of those are good, but we can't pick and choose our facts. Part of that study also shows misdemeanors in Colorado are down 13% in that time frame, 2013 to 17. Petty larcenies are down 62% in Colorado, 2012 to 14 or 13 to 17. DUIs decreased 5,705 to 4,849. Juvenile arrests for all colors is down over 13% in that time frame. So there's plenty of benefits to the fact that marijuana was legalized for consumption. One of the arguments I keep hearing made is that marijuana dispensaries will be targeting low-income minority communities. Now, I may not be the smartest guy in the room, but I thought when it comes to any business, the marketing plan would encompass the largest group of prospective customers. Now, according to the CDC, the largest demographic of marijuana users is white, which makes up 60% of users. The largest segment is women between the ages of 30 and 40 years of age. The largest segment of users in the United States are women between 30 and 40 years of age. In fact, the people of color make up less than 30% of all marijuana users. Not only that, but the regulated marijuana has been shown to be expensive because of the added taxes that come with it. So why would any business that wants to make a profit target the smallest segment of potential customers that wouldn't even be able to afford it? Okay. In fact, you're basing your claims not on usage statistics, but because marijuana has been legal for whites for years now, but on the criminal statistics that show the people of color and low-income minorities are 5 times more likely to be arrested, incarcerated for marijuana possession. In fact, crime statistics are so skewed it gives the illusion marijuana usage among people of color and minorities is significantly higher than whites, which is completely false. Okay? It is the same line of thinking that led to the original prohibition in the first place along Barry Goldwater's Southern strategy. All this rhetoric, which is racist at its core, has been debunked, and the people have said they do not want to hear it anymore. Okay? That is what has led us to social justice reforms and marijuana legalization. So please stop with the racist rhetoric, the NIMBY attitude, and understand that your scare tactics no longer work or have any basis in fact, and that marijuana is no worse than alcohol or tobacco, which are both legal, sold in the city borders, which Mrta DeStefano owns, well, his wife owns a bar. Sells themselves. They have an age limit for the purchase. Understand that the target market for dispensaries will be middle-aged white people. It's time for everyone to face the facts and see that if you want to be taken seriously and want the reputable business in your community, that making it legal now gives everyone the best opportunity to ensure the best outcomes. And while we're talking about facts, if we look at California, cities that opted out ended up with more crime and very large black market for marijuana, where cities that opted in not only had less crime, but in working with police, actually had the ability to solve more crimes due to the added security and dispensaries bring with it. And while we're talking about positives, they'll bring new business, ancillary industries like farming, manufacturing, and most of all, new jobs. This isn't the time to be short-sighted. It's a time to be optimistic and look forward to the future. Thank you.
Good evening, Council. I'm Colleen Hughes. I live in Newburgh, and I met with Mayor DeStefano and Alderman Massey and Chief Owanshu last week, invited myself to speak with them. I've worked in the legal medical cannabis industry for the last 6 years, so I can speak with authority on the issue. I've prepared some statements. I'd like to refute a lot of the things that were said today, but I'm just going to stick to my statement. Cannabis is legal now. Cannabis is a medicine first. And cannabis is not dangerous, prohibition is dangerous. The war on drugs became a war on black and brown people, and opting out ultimately will cause more undue harm on the communities of color living within the city of Middletown and further exacerbate the illicit activity occurring in your communities. Cannabis is not the gateway drug leading to addictive behaviors. We know that some people are prone to substance use issues, and that tiny percentage of the population should not determine the freedoms afforded to the rest of us who can moderate our own behaviors. What is the city afraid of? Who are your cannabis consumers? I'll tell you who. They're veterans, lawyers, doctors, judges, elected officials, nurses, EMTs, professionals, our parents, our grandparents, and our children with terrible illnesses that can't develop properly because of the cocktail of legal pharmaceuticals being pumped into their bodies. Access to cannabis should be a right, and it will be regulated, much like alcohol is, with oversight, with checking IDs, track and trace inventory controls, lab-tested products, well-trained staff to help folks select the appropriate product to treat their ailments. Not every cannabis consumer wants to get high. We want to heal. Adult use dispensaries provide broader access to cannabis medicine and lowers the barriers of obtaining their products. Chronically ill cannabis patients largely do not have the bandwidth or ability to grow their own cannabis at home. They need local, safe, legal access. On-site consumption spaces are going to be legal places folks can consume safely out of public view where minors may see them. If you don't want folks smoking near the skate park, then work with the community to locate a place for people to go consume safely and then patronize local restaurants within walking distance. The city has an opportunity to be strategic, proactive leaders in how they allow cannabis to be sold and consumed within the city limits. Please work with us. The social equity provisions in the MRTA are designed to provide community reinvestment programs and funding back into communities of color who have been unjustly persecuted due to the war on drugs. These programs, like the HEART program I created, which is a workforce development program, will provide standardized levels of competency for impacted communities who want to begin their rewarding careers in legal cannabis. Opting out will not only remove this ability for city residents should there be a residency requirement, but very likely eliminate the ability to utilize this pool of money for non-cannabis related after-school intervention programs for youth and other support services these communities need and deserve. These provisions were created to repair the harms of the drug war. Opting out only perpetuates prohibitionist propaganda that is not based in science, truth, or fact. I spoke with the mayoral equivalent of Lee, Massachusetts last week to invite him to have a dialogue with you, Mayor DeStefano. He was happy to share that since they have issued licenses in his municipality, they have seen zero negative impacts from legalization and retail, so much so that they don't know what to do with the money that host community agreements designated to offset the feared negative impacts. We know how hard it is to get people to get out and vote. It's a political tactic for the elite to keep oppressing communities of color. Opting out is a form of oppression because while the state has legalized cannabis and soon the rest of the country will, you put the burden back on the community to organize, petition, and vote for something that is already legal that you're deciding to take away from us. I will gladly email the Common Council a host of statistics to counter all of the things that were said today that are not factual and are cherry-picked. And I also invite the council to host more forums like this so that you can hear more points of view, because 3 minutes is not clearly enough to go through the deep issues that need to be heard. I think you should have a forum online where you listen to professionals and people on both sides. Thank you for your time.
Hello, everyone. My name is Pietro Giaracci. I am the chair of the Orange County, New York Libertarian Party. Additionally, I serve on the LPNY Judicial Committee and on its Executive Committee. Before I state my opposition to this law, I want to point out that Juan is the Libertarian candidate for City Council in Ward 4. And I echo the sentiments of everybody who has spoken against this law, and I'm going to add my own. I've listened to the mayor's comments and his concerns. I've listened to the chief of police's concerns, both on the video last week and this evening. And it is my belief that most of those concerns are rooted in irrational fears and stereotypes, including racially biased stereotypes. I think that the City Council has no business opting out of this because you will economically stunt this city's economy, which needs every economic injection it can get. This is a golden, or should I say a green opportunity for a lot of people in this city to make money. Will they be rolling in the dough? Maybe, maybe not. It's true there is no study, but do we do studies when someone wants to open a restaurant or a lawn care business? No. We make sure their paperwork is in order, that they're following the regulations, which there will be plenty of in the next few years. And we say, good luck, hopefully you do well. Same thing. I don't know why we need to be so different with cannabis. And you have the chief of police saying, well, we don't know if it's coming from homegrown or a dispensary or wherever. Well, I have a solution to that. Mind your own business. Seriously, this is what you're going to spend people's tax dollars on? Policing whether or not they grew their own marijuana or cannabis or they got it from a store? Who cares? I don't care. Like, seriously. And then you're going to enforce this law against 18, 19, 20-year-olds who, by the way, are considered legal adults. If you can go off to a war and die for your country, you can have a blunt. Mamma mia. Seriously, do the right thing for your community. Scrap this law.
I just want to make a comment. Whether I agree with some of the things that are said, this is a public forum, and I know there's a campaign, but we should not campaign during a government forum or a discussion. That's for outside of the city hall. So please don't campaign in your public comments.
Anybody else? That's it? Anyone else? Eileen, do we have anybody online?
Yes, we do. Bear with me 1 second, please.
Yeah, we have somebody.
Yes, we have two. Just hold on 1 second, please. Our first person is Matthew Lieber. Just give me one moment to unmute him.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you for having me online. I just wanted to make a couple comments based on the remarks from the mayor and the police chief. And please excuse any of my language if it sounds accusatory. But I just want to say, from my perspective, I'm a white man, and from where I sit, the mayor's proposal, and I live in Ward 4, by the way. The mayor's proposals, and particularly his proposal regarding proximity bans, are really a danger to our Black and brown brothers and sisters, and an invitation to continue and even extend the over-policing of our communities of color. We all want less contact with our functionally all-white police forces and not more. We know empirically that police are going to stop Black and brown and young men of color disproportionately. And we know that those same neighborhoods are going to be over-policed. Regarding the chief of police's comments regarding how do we know if marijuana is taxed or if the amount carried is legal or if it's homegrown or purchased on the black market, I want to echo the comments that it is none of your business. We have the option of not responding to every challenge our community faces with more policing. And I urge our elected officials to commit to reducing the police budget proportional to the reduction in their marijuana policing activities. I think I can say we could all use a tax break. Marijuana was legalized to remove this from the thing y'all need to be spending your limited time on. I don't think the elected and appointed leadership of Middletown gets it. The people of New York and their elected officials, they intentionally passed the most broad and permissive marijuana law in the country for that very reason, to reduce the reasons for young people and people of color and pretexts for harassment. And then I guess the mayor's statement, I hope he will clarify that weed is not the way out. I took exception to that. Nobody is trying to get out. We love our neighborhoods, and wanting to be in the marijuana business is no different than starting a wine shop or a bar or a little cafe. And your personal cultural aversion to weed in public makes no sense in a world where beer and wine is consumed in excess around children on a regular basis. Families get drunk in front of their kids at your wife's restaurant. Have you been to a Yankee game or a Buffalo Bills game? And I just want to say your grandson being exposed to someone 10 feet from a skate park smoking weed pales in comparison to a brown or black child being put through a system because marijuana was used as a pretext for a law enforcement interaction. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Next we have Troy Smith.
Oh, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Great. So thank you for holding this public hearing today. My name is Troy Smith. I am the Deputy Director of Empire State NORML. NORML is the national organization for the reform of marijuana law. We were established in 2008. We've been advocating for patients and consumers in New York since 2008. And I'm here to speak today against the local opt-out law. And I also want to take a moment and just talk about the study that was referenced in the beginning of this public hearing. Legalization of marijuana in Colorado, the public impact. This is a very widely cited study by opponents to legalization, and it was authored by the Rocky Mountain High Intensity Drug Trafficking Area Group. That organization is a apparatus of the Office of National Drug Control Policy, as well as the Drug Enforcement Agency. Those are the two federal government bodies that are dedicated towards upholding the war on drugs. Well, I just want to point out that this data, and all data, should be seen through the eyes of its filters. And all data can be skewed in many different ways. So I invite you to actually look at the report, look at the authors, and really evaluate those points they make and how they come to them on your own. With that being said, I also wanted to talk a little about what opting out is and isn't. When a local municipality opts out of the retail sale and consumption of cannabis, they're opting out of something that's already going on, and that's going to continue no matter whether they opt out or not. The legacy market has been here for decades and is, quite frankly, here to stay, especially if you opt out. That What you're opting out of is you're opting out of any of the safeguards that the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act has put in place. Some of those safeguards are all businesses will be checking for IDs. The products will be tested. There will be quality assurance controls. There will be mandatory security requirements for the cannabis retailers and lounges. Furthermore, I also want to urge the town to not make a hasty decision here. Everybody's saying that the clock is ticking, but you have over half a year to make this decision. There is going to be a lot of developments and changes put out by the Office of Cannabis Management, the New York State Cannabis Control Board, and the Cannabis Advisory Boards. I highly advise waiting to see what the possibilities of these regulations are before making any decisions on this matter. Because at the present, the Marijuana Regulation and Taxation Act is just a legal framework that has to get filled out by those regulations. So we really, aside from those basic safeguards I mentioned before, we really don't know the finer details of what this program is going to look like. So I highly urge the town to table this decision and not pass this local law. And I thank you for holding this public hearing.
Thank you. Eileen, do we have one more?
Yes, we do. We have Michael B.
There you go.
Michael, if you want to just unmute yourself, you'll be able to speak.
Hi, do you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hi, my name is Michael Buffamante. I'm also with the County Libertarian Party, and I am now a Greenville resident. I don't smoke cannabis, and I'll be clear, cannabis is a waste of time and money. I don't want my infant daughter growing up in a society where the harms of drug use continue to ravage our youths. That is precisely why I'm asking the board to not opt out of legalized sales of cannabis, because the primary harm of cannabis is not the drug itself, as harmful as it can potentially be on youth's brain development. The primary harm of cannabis is the black market that prohibition creates. Marijuana is already just as, if not more, available to youths as alcohol, yet I don't know of any gangs operating in the alcohol space. In truth, prohibition is the #1 funding source of street crime. In truth, teens have such easy access to marijuana precisely because it is illegal, and such a market is not only allowed to exist in our communities, but forced upon our community precisely thanks to prohibition. And with that black market comes unreliable and dangerous products that harm kids and adults alike. Synthetic marijuana, K2 spice, laced products, you name it, they're all a direct result of not allowing responsible licensed businesses to operate in the city. I want my daughter to grow up in a society where people can stop worrying about black markets, gang activity, and dangerous products flooding our streets and getting into the hands of teens and young adults. And I'm sorry to use such a tired cliche, but I do think that the board needs to think of the children here by allowing markets to work, by allowing people to go about their lives as they see fit, and does not play nanny state to the residents of the city of Middletown and Orange County. So I urge you to vote against the proposal to opt out. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, any members of the council?
Yep.
Alderman Massey.
I'll drink first. I've listened to everyone, and the young lady that, and I do apologize, I don't know if she's still here. Yeah. I apologize because I don't remember your name, and I know we met last week.
Colleen.
Colleen, thank you, Colleen. But at the meeting, most of your references were for medical marijuana, and that you had a vested interest. And that's fine. This does not touch medical marijuana. I don't think there's anybody on this board, at least I'm not, in favor of doing away with medical marijuana. We're all in favor of that. with our extensive meeting and with all the comments tonight, it brings me back to one question that I still hasn't been answered. What is the downside of opting out when we can opt in at any time? If we choose not to opt out and January 1st comes by, then we're stuck. If we see, if the regulations, I didn't hear one speaker come up here and tell me what all the rules and regulations, they're going to come out. We understand that. And I think that's wonderful. Still working on them. That's great. But they're not out yet. So we don't have all the information. So if we decide to opt out, the information comes and we say, wow, you know what? That's not that bad after all. But we don't know that yet. And I'll tell you what else bothers me. We get personal in these things because people get passionate, and I understand that. Lexi comes every once in a while, and he's good at it, throws a few stones, and of course he leaves. He doesn't want to stick around. And I wonder if the mayor's family wasn't involved in a bar and a restaurant, the attacks, I mean, stop it. We're not talking about alcohol. I owned a bar for 16 years. I know what the ramifications are. I know what the rules and regulations. When I applied for my liquor license, I knew everything down there. We still don't have that information. And please, my last thing, and I don't know why you people, or I shouldn't say you people, a number of people want to make this a racial issue. It's not a racial issue. I don't care if it's a white person, a black person, a Hispanic person. I text the mayor about 5:30 tonight because I was out on my porch, and what I had to see was a young lady, I don't know, she's probably in her 30s. She was with a friend of hers, a gentleman. They were up right in the street, leaning against their car, smoking a joint, and right above them was her 5-year-old son. And I said, geez, I don't think I want to see that. I didn't like it. And no one has come up with any reason for me to change my mind. And I don't see any reason not to opt out. If you come up with something, I'm be happy to listen to every one of you. But nobody has said why we shouldn't opt out as a good reason, because we can opt in. If we don't opt out and we go to January 1, we're done. Thank you.
Alderman Consume.
Thank you. This is a tough conversation. You know, I don't even know where to start. A lot of things were said. I agree. You know, people are very passionate about their feelings about these things. I think some of these arguments have merit. Some of them don't. I don't think that we're a body of people with irrational fears. I think that we're parents. You know, I have 4 kids, little kids. So I don't think it's an irrational fear on what this might mean to their safety. I don't think it's irrational that I don't want to feel like my 6-year-old is going to walk through a cloud of smoke in a public place. I don't even like walking through cigarette smoke in a public place. That's a choice that I should be allowed to make and not have taken from me and my children as well. I don't have any issues with marijuana. I have 2 autoimmune diseases, and I would actually stand very well to benefit from the use of it, frankly. I haven't even gone down that road yet, but you know what? That's there for me and something I've certainly considered. I have rheumatoid arthritis. It's painful. I understand its value. I understand its need. But I also understand that, you know, this argument of you're going to drive to Wallkill so you can get this and smoke this and then drive back to town. No, you can actually smoke it at home, and then you don't have to drive anywhere. And if we don't have a cafe, there's even less reason for you to go out, become intoxicated, and then drive yourself home in our town. And I will say, you know, you speak about, we brought this report from Colorado, okay? Everyone's claiming it's not valid, it's not real. Well, my main job is that I do reports for law enforcement agencies all over the country. I do their reporting. And I do reporting specifically in Colorado. And I do the reports for the people who are passed out at a traffic light in their car with it running because they're intoxicated. And it's marijuana. It's not just meth, it's not just heroin. It is marijuana that intoxicates people to the point where they cannot operate their vehicle, which puts other people at risk. So yes, some of those numbers are not completely skewed. Those are real things. I see them in the work that I type and do every single day. And I think it's important for us to express a little caution. I have no issues at all with the law itself whatsoever. And then the people who made the points about the safety of a dispensary, you've made a very valid point. Because I also do a lot of reports with the dangers of fentanyl-laced drugs that are deadly. So I'm a little torn on that myself. There are two parts of this law, right? We have the cafe side and we have the dispensary side. And I'll tell you, I'm really struggling on the dispensary side on seeing a reason why we shouldn't allow them, because at least the product that's being purchased within our city is safe, because there is a very real danger with the black market drug. And I can agree with that. You know, you've made very valid arguments on some of the points here, and I see them. I just want you to understand that you were heard tonight. I don't want you to think we're just knocking down everything you said, because I don't think that that's true. Some very good points were made. But I feel like there's no reason not to be cautious on something that's unfinished. I think the state of Vermont had been doing it for like 3 years, the rollout took, or something like that, and they were very cautious. I think there is merit to the reason why a state like Colorado went out and said public consumption and then rolled it back. You don't roll something like that back without reason. And I think there's no harm for us as a city to be cautious with the knowledge that if you make this choice, you know, Alder Massey makes a good point. You always have the right to say, you know what, this is well regulated, this is good for our community, we can absolutely put this in place. But deciding our fate in the other way decides our fate completely, with no controls and no ability to decide how that works, with basically our blinders on, because we don't know the future. We don't know what it looks like. We don't know if it's going to be well regulated. It's a complicated issue. And it's not the same as smoking a cigarette, because it does impair your ability to perform certain functions depending on how much you consume. So it's not as simple as that. And I don't think that we're being irrational. I think we're just being cautious, because this isn't just, I 100% your respect and your freedom to use this, and I fully support it. And you're capable of doing that on your property and at your home. But we also have to consider the health and safety and well-being of everybody else in this community too, who might not share that belief, and for our kids and things like that. So I feel like being cautious here is not a bad thing. This is not us saying that we don't respect anyone's decision to use or anyone's personal choices. But I think caution here might be a good idea. Like I said, when it comes to the dispensary side of things, I don't know. For me, that backside of caution is actually better if people know what they're getting and what they're consuming and what's in it, for safety's sake. That's all I have, sir.
Anyone else? Alderman Johnson.
Thank you. So I started this thought process a month ago, and it came up. And I'm a child of the 60s. I was on a college campus for all of the 70s. Thank you very much. My gut response was probably not something that's good for my community on the quality of life issues. Listening, Alderman Sparrow put this out at the last meeting, and I said, well, you know, I'm going to have to think about that. And I find some of the aspects of the conversation to be somewhat specious and some of them to be somewhat of a non sequitur. A lot of things are thrown into the pot in the last hour. We've gone from prohibition of alcohol in the 20s and 30s and what that meant or didn't mean. We've gone to the war on drugs. We've gone to racism. We've gone to economic opportunity. We've gone to quality of life. And for me, most importantly tonight, the line has been blurred back and forth between the argument about legalization, which is not an argument to be had at this point in our state, and the conversation about dispensary of product and consumption of product. And then we throw in 10 feet from a park, and then we throw in public consumption is good over here, but not over there. It's been a whole mishmash of concepts. Me personally, I would like to take all the concepts that talked about legalization, which does, with all due respect to the chief, include law enforcement. I read this document. I agree with the speaker. You can make statistics, do anything you want it to do. Pick your outcome, find your stats, put a piece of paper and say, this is what I've got. No deference to anybody. When I read this document, I thought about a couple of things. Number one, they talk about the fact, what about alcohol and marijuana together? How do you as the consumer who wants to be responsible know, can I have a beer, smoke a joint, and get in my car? Or how long do I have to stay outside of my car before I can get back in the car and be safe? You know, when you go to a bar, the tips regulations, I've had the trained bartenders, which I am on occasion, says, you know, every drink, you need an hour to consume that alcohol. So if you have 3 drinks, you got to hang around with me for a while. And the bartender's responsibility is to say, you know what, we need to kind of keep track of what you're doing. How does that work with marijuana? You don't know how long it is between smoking 2 joints for an hour and not being impaired or being impaired. But that's all on the regulation side of law implementation. That has nothing to do with what's before us tonight. There was a comment made about suicide and marijuana. You know, when I read that, I saw it the other way. I said, well, maybe somebody who's already unfortunately made the commitment to commit suicide is using marijuana as kind of a transition to get to that spot. This study would make you believe that more marijuana means more suicide. I'm not sure that that's a valid point A to point B conversation for me. We talked about the fact that we're 5.2 square miles. And are you going to build a moat around your little city and nothing's going to come into your city with respect to consumption and bad driving or good driving or marijuana and alcohol or no alcohol? And we don't have that moat. There's been an argument, well, you make a guy drive 500 feet to get to Wallkill to buy the product and then have that person drive home. That's one of the arguments I find to be somewhat specious. I don't see that really has a lot to bring to the table. But there is a lot to be thought about. And you've brought a lot of topics. Some of them I see, some of them I don't see are pertinent to the argument. The argument here is to ban, not to ban consumption. Consumption's already on the table. The argument is to ban dispensation and on-site consumption. And is that okay for our town or not okay for our town? Does that prohibit quality of life? Is it a racist comment to do it? Is it a racist comment not to do it? A lot of stuff came across the table tonight. And I thank you for the opportunity to think about it. And I've talked quite enough. Thanks.
Thank you. Alderman Kleiner?
Thank you. I want to thank everyone who came tonight to speak. It's an issue we've been presented with, and we have to consider all sides. We have a local law on the table, and we have to vote on it. I have a lot of different opinions, and I actually in college taught a drug education course, and when Middletown Cares started, I tried to steer them away from worrying so much about marijuana and worry about pharmaceuticals and worry about heroin and worry about the things that were killing our kids. So I grew up with reefer madness when that all in the Rockefeller drug laws and the zero tolerance and all that insanity. I lived in Texas when Leotis Johnson, for political reasons, had a roach, just a little stub of a marijuana cigarette planted on him by the Houston police, and he was sentenced to 30 years for possession. So I've seen what the laws can do. I've seen the disparities. I read the Colorado report, not completely. There's a lot of detail in it, but I did notice in one of the statistics that use by younger children went down after marijuana was legalized. I thought that was interesting. I have no idea what it means. I do have some specific questions, and when I taught drug education, it was because psychedelics, and this was mostly in the 60s, and psychedelics were really on the rise, and people were dropping stuff and consuming stuff off the street. You know, it could be laced with strychnine. It could be 30,000 micrograms of LSD. Or it could be 10, or it could be nothing. You just didn't know. And in DC at the time, LSD was legal. And Sandoz sold those beautiful little blue pills. You could crush it up and you could dropper it out and you knew exactly what you were getting. That was a big difference than taking a street drug. So I understand, you know, the police they do care. They are taxed with enforcing the law. And if the law is going to say that legal marijuana is taxed, and it's not true that you don't enforce things now. I mean, the police a lot of times go to convenience stores and send in younger age people and see if they're sold cigarettes or see if they're sold alcohol. I mean, it is something you care about. The question really in the police doing their job and making sure, and it will be a safety issue, but we don't know what the regulations will be, and I thank all the people who pointed that out. If you don't understand why December 31st is a cutoff one way and not the other, after December 31st, if you do opt out, then afterwards you can opt back in, no harm done. You've delayed it for a little while. If you opt in, then after December 31st, you might have people in your community making a big investment in dispensaries, in preparing buildings, in lounges, and investing a lot of money. Well, you can't just turn around and say, oh, now we've decided to opt out. So you understand why that works one way and not the other way. I have a question about the referendum because our first chance, and I would hope we're not going to vote on it our next meeting is July 6th. And, there was a suggestion to table it and have more discussion on it. But if we voted on it July 6th, then the mayor has 10 days to sign it, and if he and then I don't know if this substitutes for the public hearing you're supposed to have after you pass a law, if we'd still have to have that. But, if there's 10 days, you're talking about July 16th. Well, for a permissive referendum to be on the ballot this fall, it has to be my understanding is it has to be into the Board of Elections by August 1st. Well, that doesn't give you a lot of time to go around collecting signatures. That's like a couple of weeks. So I know it could be put on the ballot next year, I believe, but that is a question I have that I'm not really sure. I believe permissive referendums require 5%. Alex can clarify that, but I don't believe it's 10%. I believe it's 5% of registered voters. I think it's different from running as a candidate where it's 5% of the voters or whatever percent they determine of the voters who voted in the last gubernatorial election. But I think that's different, but that's something to consider if you're thinking about doing it and letting the voters decide as a permissive referendum. So the planning board almost 2 weeks ago approved a new bar to go in at 90 North Street right under Senator Martucci's office. It's going to be allowed to be open on the weekends from 12 p.m. to 4 a.m. For Friday and Saturday. It's catty corner across from Nelson's. It's a replacement. It's a new bar going in where a bar has been before, so they didn't have to get zoning board approval for a different use. But nonetheless, they're going to have music. It's going to go to 4 a.m. And, we're used to that. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure when we want to vote on this. We can table it for a while. If we table it, then, there wouldn't be a referendum this year when we'd be waiting and see to vote on it. If we vote to opt out, then I want to be sure that we would be allowed to present the local law next year, if we look around at other places that have not opted out and that are allowing it, and find out that it's not been a problem, it's not been a burden, and it's going well, that we would be allowed to opt in, that would be something we'd be able to do as a council, because it sounds good, but you can't always do it. So we have a lot of things to think about. Thank you.
Alderman Tobin.
Thank you. I agree with Alderman Massey about not keeping it personal. I don't think we should. I think we got to keep it respectful. Just start out saying I'm not like pro pot, not pro cannabis. My drug of choice is beer, red wine. I do have an occasional cigar. When I go in the smoke shop and ShopRite, there are not people smoking cigars all over the place. In the parking lot. They take their cigars home. I think I agree with some of the points that were made. Alderman Johnson said this is almost sounds like a referendum or like a resolution against the law itself. By opting out, we're not making Middletown a dry town. That's not going to happen. We're still going to have the problems with the enforcement side, the quality of life side. People can grow marijuana, they can smoke marijuana or cannabis, they can buy it outside of town, bring it back in town. We're still going to have to deal with the odor problems. We're still going to have to deal with the detection issues. And we're going to have to deal with that either way, whether this happens or not, whether you're pro. I hear a lot of arguments against the law itself that has been passed. I think what we're really talking about is the dispensaries. And I think, and for me, it's more about the economic opportunity and the social justice and economic justice piece. And this is for people that are 21 and over. The cannabis industry is not targeting kids. I'm not pro tobacco either. My mom died of lung cancer, so this is for 21 and older, for adults. And so, before the prohibition of alcohol, folks were talking about, how domestic violence would increase, automobile crashes, lost wages would be, associated with drunkenness would occur, and the sky would fall if the Volstead Act was passed that took away the 18th Amendment. But actually, we know crime went down, right? The gangsters started, Al Capone's and those folks lost a lot of money. Cannabis has been around since the country's founding. It was hemp. They used it for rope, on boats. It was called cannabis in colonial times. The 1930s, it was weaponized against the black and brown community, especially in the South. Here's a quote from an iconic movie, not as iconic as The Godfather, but a little different. I think Jerry mentioned it. Talks about marijuana. The frightful toll of the new drug menace, which is destroying the youth of America, is alarmingly increasing numbers. Marijuana is that drug, a violent narcotic, an unspeakable scourge, the real public enemy number one. Its first effect is sudden, violent, uncontrollable laughter. Then comes dangerous hallucinations. Space expands, time slows down, almost stands still. Fixed ideas come next, conjuring up monstrous extravagances, followed by emotional disturbances, the total inability to direct thoughts, the loss of all power to resist physical emotions, leading finally to acts of shocking violence, ending often in incurable insanity. And that was some reefer madness, right? And so then they used the Spanish term for cannabis, which is marijuana. And, it's basically peddling fear, and it was used to, weaponize laws against black and brown communities. And, cannabis is often referred to as a gateway drug, as I talked about last time, but it really has become a gateway to the criminal justice system for people of color. And, the statistics can't be ignored. The systematic racism that has impacted the black and brown community can't be ignored. The idea that that equal use among whites and blacks, and was cited maybe even less, people of color are 4 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana-related offenses, and that 90% of the arrests and summonses last year related to cannabis were people of color. So, and this related to a huge collateral damage to the African and people of color community. I'm glad that our people spoke tonight. And so, that young kid that got a marijuana-related offense or had to plead down because they didn't want a drug offense on their record, they had to check those boxes when they got a job. Maybe they didn't get those jobs. Maybe they had kids that they had to support. There's a massive collateral damage to the community that this part of this law tries to fix through economic justice. We've had a lot of great things this year: police reform, the Juneteenth holiday, cannabis reform. And so, this is to right the wrongs of the past. part of the law, there's going to be equity officers. So they're trying to, if you have a dispensary, you're going to be encouraged to hire people of color. The licenses are going to be, there's equity licenses to own dispensaries that are being encouraged people of color to open up these businesses. So there's a lot of, and then there's not just the dispensaries, there's laboratories, there's farms, there's manufacturing, there's the hemp side or cannabis side, the creams, all that stuff that can be really related. This is an entire new industry. And I think there's a lot of fear because it's new. I mean, we're not afraid of alcohol. I think that's the parallel. So, let's not shut the door on revenue and jobs that this might create, in the fear mongering or targeting kids and that kind of stuff. I think it's silly. People can grow it, they can buy it, they can get it delivered into Middletown. And so I think that to opt out is just, it's not going to become a dry town. We're still going to have these challenges, which I think we're going to have to address. No law is perfect, but I think we should not opt out. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. A motion to close the public hearing. Alderman Massey.
Keep it open 2 weeks. Oh, you're going to keep it open for 2 weeks?
I'll keep it open for comments for 2 weeks. So keep it open for 2 weeks. Alderman Massey, second. Do I have a second? Alderman Tobin, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone, for coming out for the public hearing. Correspondence.
Nothing this evening.
All right. Mayor's remarks.
Yeah, I'd just like to follow up on a couple of the comments. I was surprised by Sparrow's comment. First, he's talking about that this isn't about the state law, but then he's talking about making, we're not a dry town, and we're, because in our other conversations, he did express concern about the on-site consumptions. Not one person addressed that, either on the board, except Alderman Massey, I believe, did, and maybe Kate and Paul addressed it, but the public consumption part was not addressed by anyone that spoke up here tonight. Not one person addressed it. And that's a surprise. The other part is the opt-out provisions. Kate, you're exactly right that we have discussed opting out of one, and I think I made that clear at the beginning of my presentation that you can opt out of one or the other, or both. So to sit here and say that because I'm making a proposal, you're implying that I'm some part of some racist conspiracy by either some of the idiots that made that remark in the audience.
You're addressing me?
I'm addressing you now because you're sort of implying the same thing.
You are.
I
don't listen.
I'm speaking now. I'm speaking now. You get to respond to me when I'm done
take
speaking.
offense to your implying that.
Because it's unfortunate. Because you and I had a phone conversation. You expressed concerns to me about public consumption and on-site consumption. And then a few people come to a public hearing and you do a complete 180 and try to imply to the public here to get an applause line
Oh, jeez.
that we are some kind of playing into some big racial conspiracy is wrong. You didn't lay out the facts. You didn't lay out the facts that by opting out, we have the opportunity to opt back in. Jerry, you're wrong on it's 10% on the front. The law specifically states on the referendum that you have 45 days after the passage of the local law in order to gather the signatures. That's in this law. This is not election law. This is cannabis law. You have 45 days after the passage of the local law, and petitions must be signed by 10% of the electorate. You must be a qualified voter of the city of Middletown. So there's some misrepresentations here. There's no timeline running out. And if we opt out, you can opt back in at any time. We're not squeezing them to bring it down to a 2-week period to go out and get 10% of the signatures. That's a misrepresentation. And unfortunate because you've had all this information. This comes down to opting out and protecting the city. By your own admission, you're saying the information's not there. By your own admission. that we don't have the information, we don't have the data, we don't know what's going to happen. Some people did make a compelling argument for possibly dispensaries. Not one person made a compelling argument for on-site consumption. Not one person addressed what I hope they would have addressed was the public consumption. In fact, Colleen, is she still here? No, she left. When Colleen met with us, she agreed with us on a lot of the things. Then she comes out here to grandstand. She agreed. I don't like the public consumption part of this. She agreed that she was going to disclose, because I told her at the beginning, she's going to disclose at the beginning of her presentation that she has a financial interest in this law, because she is going to be one of her company is going to be the benefactor of distributing some of that 40% money to maybe the one or two possible, quote, winners in the black and brown community that will be able to host a facility. You also mentioned about smoking outside around our parks and around our kids. Is it okay with you, Sparrow? Is it okay for you? Is it okay for you that when you go to the Paramount Theater with your family, that your kids have to walk through a group of people smoking pot? Is that okay? Because that's what it comes down to with the on-site consumption, or the public consumption. That's what it comes down to. You can sit here all night long and play to the audience. You can sit here and you can talk about what many of these folks here talked about, my wife having a liquor license. Well, people don't walk down the street drinking liquor. You can talk about who are we afraid of? Who are we afraid of? We're afraid of people like Lexi coming up here. That's the guy you're afraid of. That's the guy you want in this community, influencing policy in this community? No, I don't think so. But most of them made an argument for against public consumption. And they did it in a way of their silence, because not one person defended it. Not the libertarian guys that apparently this is now a new libertarian argument throughout the state. That's going to be where they're going to stick their the flag. They're going to hang their flag there. The guy from Normal is arguing about the statistics. He said they're wrong. Didn't cite one thing that was wrong. He just questioned the people who put it together. Didn't say one thing about a statistic in there that was inaccurate. But we have the opportunity to imply, in the presentation, to talk about expungement of records, the impact on the black and brown community. I clearly stated, and have been a supporter, wrote a letter on behalf of, I don't know if you did, but I wrote a letter to the state of New York supporting the expungement part of the law. I also wrote a letter concerned about the driving while impaired portion of the law also. So are there portions of the law that can be supported? Possibly. But you know what? After 12/31, it doesn't matter. How about the dispensary? Because I know that's where we're going to go. Some people are going to say, and Kate, you raised a good point about the dispensaries. What in the cannabis regulations prohibit a dispensary after getting a license from becoming an on-site dispensary? Nothing, because they don't exist. And that's why we need to opt out of both. Until they come back onto the table and show what the rules and regulations are, we need to opt out for the safety of this community. We're not going to stop people from smoking pot. We're not trying to stop people from smoking pot. But to have a member of the council grandstand with an audience is just absolutely horrible. Because what you started out focusing on the law. You said this is an opt-out. This is what we're talking about, whether we should opt out or not. Then you went into these conspiracy theories, citing whatever things that we probably all agree on. Matter of fact, in my presentation, I mentioned that the black and brown community are charged at 3 or 4 times more, the rate higher than the white community are, in regards to marijuana violations. But that's not what this is about. So I'm hoping that we'll get more written comment. You know, there weren't a lot of people here. I want to thank Mr. Gilfeather from Orange Bank and Trust. I think it took a lot of courage for a bank president, a person who's invested, not his own money personally, but the bank money, the people that do a lot of outreach into this community with businesses and recognize the potential negative impacts that an unknown law without rules, without regulations, could have on a community such as Middletown. Now, we're one of the first out of the box, I'll grant you that. We didn't have to do a public hearing. Not required under the law. The public hearing under the local law process is after you adopt it. And the public hearing would have been held by me. I requested the public hearing, and I want to thank you for holding the public hearing because I think it's important to hear. But I also think you saw a lot of good points. I think you saw the other side too, of what we're up against sometimes in a community such as ours. And people who think that their loud voice or their insulting comments about people's family members are going to get them in a position where they're going to influence a body. Well, that doesn't work either. I don't mind disagreement. I don't mind, and I think I've spoken to some of you individually. Matter of fact, one councilman was in my office just today, and we spoke about it in quite detail. And he asked me, he says, what do you think? I said, do what you want to do. I says, what's in your own conscience, do what you want to do. Just don't try to grandstand. Don't try to make it something that it's not. If you want to look at it just as a strictly governmental function, and the governmental function is how do we best protect Middletown, I don't think we have a choice. And as Mr. Massey acknowledged, is to opt out because we can always opt back in. If you want to look at it as a fairness issue, if you want to get it to the public, we have to opt out, no matter how we look at it. I think the only choice is to opt out, with the possibility of opting back in. It's pretty clear cut to me. But I don't have a vote. I don't have a vote on where they're going to go. That'll be your decision. And hopefully you folks will all tell your residents, as you're out knocking on their doors this year, that there's a potential for one of these facilities, on-site consumptions, going in your neighborhood. And then see what they think. Or when the police get a call that there's my neighbor's kids on the front lawn smoking pot, or on the sidewalk smoking pot, his friends are, and I got to shut my kid's window, who's going to be the first one to call the police? They're going to call you, and then you're going to call the police. Not a thing we can do about it. So the public consumption is the most important part of this law to me. The on-site cafes is very important to me. And the dispensaries are negotiable. But only negotiable after we opt out, because there is a valid argument on it. So I think we have to opt out on both, and then we'll review as we move forward. And some of these idiots are not going to lecture me about what's in the best interest of the black and brown community. As you all know, I have a grandson who's biracial. So I'm not going to listen to anybody's BS about protecting the black and brown communities, because that's my life, is protecting my grandson and how he is perceived by police, and how he perceives police, how he is going to grow up, how he's going to look at opportunity in life and get an education. Not because he has an opportunity at the age of 21 to open up a pot store on North Street in Middletown. That's not my goal for my kid, and I don't think it's a goal for anybody else's kid to have. But those are all personal comments, so forget about it. And I know I'm getting a little emotional about it, but the point is I see they were all very brave to hang around for they were quick to throw stones, but they all hung around for the rebuttal. They're very courageous people, and because they can't stand up to it. We had one guy up here. He lives in the community. He started arguing, Alderman Massey and I. Oh, you're trying to bully me because you told me that they can put one in my backyard. This guy is the biggest complainer about what happens in his backyard now. And then he had the nerve to say, well, the police job is to enforce the parking lot, not to allow this happen in the parking lot. We said, no. It's going to be legal, guy. They're going to sell it here. They're going to go to their parking lot, and they're going to be able to smoke it in the parking lot. And yes, you are going to smell it. And then he called us. He said, we're trying to bully him. But I give him credit for coming tonight and speaking. But I guarantee you, he'll be one of the loudest voices as we move ahead. And Logan, this is, to me, the most ridiculous part of the law, is the chief touched on it. We teach kids not to smoke. We teach kids the DARE program. We teach kids not to do drugs. We teach them all these good things. Now we're going to target them. We're going to sell it to them. And then we're going to tax it. And then 20% of the tax is going to go to treatment. Seems like a circular argument to me. Get them engaged in buying the product and using the product. And if they abuse it, the money they spent for the product, we're going to use to give them treatment. I don't see it. But whether I agree with the statewide law or not, and a lot of them express their personal opinions, and I'm expressing mine also. But the legislative action is different than all of our individual opinions. And the legislative action is opt in and opt out and protect the city's interests. When the rules come out, when they're adopted by New York State, by the Cannabis Board, and where they cannot be changed, and then we can talk about things that will potentially happen within the city of Middletown. That's all I have on that. Garbage and noncompliance. June 13th, we started if your trash is not in the green can, it will not be picked up. If you produce more than one can will hold, you need to contact DPW and purchase the second can. I did it. It's $100 for the year. But you cannot use your recycling bin anymore. We advertise this. We have brochures that we're going to be distributing. We're going to houses that are non-compliant at this point. And then we'll be doing a mailing in the water bill with the brochure, and hopefully people will get the message. As you know, we're only opening Davidge Park Pool. We're down to 7 lifeguards. We lost one with our big advertisement push. Instead of picking up lifeguards, we lost one. So we will only be able to open Davidge, and it will possibly, if we lose more, possibly at some reduced hours or some reduced programs. We're also at this point, the COVID laws have not changed in relation to, according to Ray Lynn today, in relation to pool capacity. So the pool will be at reduced capacity also. So expect a lot of concerns from parents that they don't have access. Best news of the day is the O&W station. Assemblywoman Gunther has notified us that in the state budget, she was able to get a $2 million appropriation for the renovation of the O&W station. In addition, next meeting, I will be introducing to you our recommendations, the administration's recommendations on how to spend the ARPA money. Of that $11.3 million, we're requesting $3 million go into the O&W project. That'll bring us up to $5 million, and we have a couple other funding options that are possible. So I believe this project will be a go. The project is, the engineer sent over today a change in the projections from $7.2 to $8 million based on a few other things that he discovered, but still the project will be a go. I can almost guarantee it. This is a picture of its current condition. The back part where the fire was may have to be torn down. Hasn't been determined yet, but the project is going to be exciting for this community. ABCD Head Start will be our prime tenant, taking up approximately half of the building. On Saturday will be Juneteenth. The celebration will be at Festival Square. I want to thank Yaya Williams and the organization that put this all together. This is the first of what we hope will be an annual event, and everyone is invited. And of course, on July 2nd, we will be having our fireworks display in Davidge Park. There's no amenities, there's no stands, there's no play equipment, there's no music, just fireworks, and we're just trying to comply with the COVID large gathering guidelines. And of course, the COVID is still, although the governor announced today, the guidelines only apply to people who have been vaccinated. If you have not been vaccinated, you are still required to wear a mask, and hopefully you will. And also this week, we opened the Senior Center. We had a great turnout for the opening day there. Julissa put together a nice program, and we're very happy. The seniors are very happy to be back, and I think the Record gave it some pretty good coverage also. And you can see the excitement on the faces of of many of the seniors that were there. The others had masks on, so I couldn't see the excitement. But that was that. And that's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Any questions for the mayor?
Thank you.
Okay, reports of the department heads, economic development.
Nothing this evening unless anybody has any questions.
Question for Maria? Thank you, Maria.
Good move.
Police chief.
Good evening once again. Correct. My stance on the marijuana is more on the enforcement, and I know that pertains no matter what, whether we opt out or don't opt out. But just a couple clarifications I would like to make. There's some discussion about the statistics related to intox drivers. I guess I didn't really drive this point home enough while I was speaking before, but there's a lot of research out there, a lot of statistics that show that there's a decrease in it. But as I was mentioning earlier, they've taken away enforcement abilities with it. There's no mechanism. So therefore, when there's no mechanism for enforcement, obviously the numbers are going to come down. And for the couple people that suggested I mind my business, that's not going to happen because I still have a role as the police chief. And that's enforcement. And there is still enforcement efforts that go along with these new laws. Again, maybe I wasn't clear. The difference between the 3 ounces of marijuana on your person and the 5 pounds of homegrown marijuana, how are we going to determine what is what when we have the enforcement efforts in front of us? So again, that is not going to happen. I still have a responsibility to this community. Just going forward, the fireworks, we are out. I have staff going from store to store, housing complexes. We have the fire department that helped us out putting it on their electronic board to remind our residents that fireworks possession, use, and sale are not authorized within the city limits. I know we're coming up on the 4th of July holiday. It's a exciting time. People like to utilize them, but there are so many dangers that go along with them. And I think just about every year we end up with some type of fire and many, many accidents related to that. So please, please listen, abide by the laws, and stay safe. Other than that, I have nothing unless you have questions for me.
Any question from police chief? Thank you, chief. DPW commissioner.
Good evening, all. To report to you the reservoir levels, Alderman Massey, they are 99.8% full. The milling, we are proceeding with our milling program. So you know, this year we're doing about 4 times as much as in amount of work as much as we do every year. So it's a huge amount of milling and repaving, and we're excited about it. And we thank the mayor and hopefully the council for allowing us to utilize $1.5 million additional funding from the American Reinvestment, or from the $12 million that the city will be getting. So we appreciate that very much. It's going to be used along with the CHIP money that we have. With that, I'd like to express my gratitude and the mayor's gratitude for the supervisor of the town of Wallkill and the Commissioner of Public Works for the town of Wallkill, Lou Ingracia, for giving us 3 trucks in there to help us with conveying the milling after it's been milled, after the road has been milled. We need a huge amount of trucks in order to catch up and to have a very productive operation. So I want to thank the supervisor of the town of Wallkill and the Commissioner of Public Works for giving us 3 trucks to help us with this operation. Davidge Park expansion project is moving along. The water, the 20-inch and the 12-inch high-pressure water mains, the construction is moving along very slowly, is because of Orange and Rockland with their abandoned gas main, and we're trying to resolve this as soon as possible. The good news is the ADA curbs and sidewalks, that project is going to be finished this week. And if you do see gaps within the curbs and sidewalks in Dolson Avenue, as an example, wherever there's traffic lights in there, the work stopped. That's because another project, which is going to be starting very soon, will close that gap. So you will have continuous curbs and sidewalks in Dolson Avenue and everywhere else in the city. And with that, I will conclude my remarks. Sunup did a great job too, I should say that, for the curbs and sidewalks.
Alderman Kleiner.
Just quickly, Jacob, we had questions at the constituents meeting. Do you have any idea when the paving is going to begin, when the milling will be done?
The paving is going to begin after we are done, immediately after we are done with the milling.
With the milling.
The reason we don't start the paving while the milling is going on is because we don't have the manpower, we don't
Right.
have the truck, we don't have the equipment, so.
I just wondered if you had any estimate on that right now.
Probably in a
guesstimate?
couple of weeks.
Couple of weeks,
Yeah,
okay.
in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Thank you, Jacob. Corporation Counsel?
I don't have anything, except I will follow up on Jerry's questions about the timing of the referendum, how the 45 days plays into when the local law is passed, if it's passed, and, how that bumps into the normal referendum issues. Okay? Other than that, I don't have anything else. Anybody has any
Any
questions?
question for Alex? Alderman Tobin?
If we opt out, is it referendum to opt back in or local law to opt back in?
Local law.
Local law?
You mean after January 1st?
Yeah.
Oh, at the local law.
Okay.
Okay. John?
Nothing this evening.
All right. Remarks of Alderman. Alderman Massey.
Nothing this evening.
Alderman Tobin.
Well, I just want to address what the mayor said before. I don't like it when people get personal, and I disliked how they mentioned his family, and, I think we can agree to disagree on issues without getting personal, and I'm sorry that he stooped to that level. And this idea of putting words in people's mouths and beating up like a straw man, things I did not say. I wrote down what I was going to say tonight before I came here. I didn't know if there's going to be 2 people here or 3 people here. I have concerns, just like I said, I didn't change my position about public consumption. I think it's going to be an issue. The odor, driving while under the influence. I brought this up with the chief, past council meetings. I still have concerns about that. But we can disagree without getting personal, and I'm disappointed about that part. And to put words in my mouth that I did not say, I also disagree with. But I am happy to hear about the O&R funds. I mean, we are doing a lot of great work, and you're doing a lot of great work, though I do disagree with you on the opt-out, and I'm happy to see the senior center back. Thank you.
Alderman Johnson.
Well, I want to compliment the mayor. He went from passion to garbage pickup. Very nicely, nice pivot on that one, Mayor. I said most of what I thought before. There's a lot of blurring of the lines tonight. Implementation, law enforcement, public consumption. I think the mayor's made a good point. The dispensation versus the consumption did not really get defined as clear lanes. And with respect to personal comments, a business was referred to tonight as being characterized by shootings and stabbings, plural, by 2 speakers. I think we need to think about invoking our right to call a point of order and to say that is not the type of commentary that we are tolerating at this council. And if that's all you have to say, then I think you're done. I really am regretful that I personally did not call a point of order because it was clearly out of order. And maybe with any other business, we would have called him on it. But because it's all getting blurred between the mayor and everything else, that somehow we let that go. We should not let that go. They should have been called on it. Thank you.
Alderman Recusone.
I just be very quick. Next week, Tuesday, the 3rd Ward is having their monthly ward meeting. We'll be back in the park again at the pavilion, and no worry about whether we get a little roof there. And I just wanted to say on behalf of Alderman Green, who reached out to me tonight, he was unable to be here this evening because he had a minor medical emergency in his family. Everyone's okay, but it was sudden and he had to run out, so he just apologizes for his absence. He was tuned in to Channel 20, was watching, and he just wanted to make sure everyone understood that he heard what everyone had to say this evening. That's all I have.
Alderman Kleiner.
Thank you. We had our constituents meeting yesterday, and you knew we had our meeting because that was that super downpour. It was just right when our meeting would begin. So I'm glad we did it inside. I want to thank everyone who turned out anyway, and Chief, thank you. Your officers were terrific at the meeting. June 21st, next week, summer begins, so happy summer, everyone. The Juneteenth celebration, Mayor's at 11 a.m.? Is that 11 to the Juneteenth celebration on next Saturday?
11 to 3.
11 to 3, okay. I want to make sure everyone knows that. There was a dedication of a bench and a walk in a tree, a place to overlook Davidge Park for past Chief Lou Ogden. That was last Thursday, I believe. It's very nice, so if you get a chance, go look at it. I want to give a shout out to John Perino. I didn't do that last time, but looking at the results of the school board election, way to go, John. And that's when you build community trust. It was a terrific showing. One other thing, the senior center opening, that was very nice. People were really glad to be back. And I didn't speak and say anything, but what I should have said was thank you to the senior center staff, because, you know, we just hit that milestone this week of 600,000 people dead from COVID. So we still are the highest in the world. But during that time when we were all desperate and we couldn't get vaccinations and people didn't know where to turn, the senior center staff was there, Julissa and Jean and Donna and everyone. And believe me, if you called them, they helped you. They got you in, they got you to get to a place to get a shot. So they were really terrific. In the time when they weren't allowed to be open, they were still there doing their job, and they really deserve a commendation for that. So, thank you.
Alderman John Francois.
Yes, good evening. I'd like to thank everyone that came out this evening for the public hearing. It was very informative, but I choose to opt out of my comments this evening about local law. There's a lot to consume, and it gave me a lot to think about. And I just want everyone to think about our city and not to make it anything else. And what amazes me is a lot of people that came out for smoking a blunt, but when we talked about the vaccine, I didn't see that many people in this chamber. And that's a concern. And with that said, you know, I would just want to wish everyone happy Father's Day and have a great weekend. Thank you.
Alderman Burr.
I would also like to thank everybody for coming out. Very informational. The mayor's opinions, we have our opinions, so we'll make our vote when it comes up time to make our vote. The best thing I heard is Assembly Gunther giving us $2 million. I think, like the mayor said, I think it finally might happen. We might see the O&W get revised. Thank you.
New business.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Massey to accept a donation from the Kiwanis Club of Middletown in the amount totaling $180 for summer camp scholarships.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Massey, seconded by Alderman Johnson. Any discussion? Roll.
Graham Cassoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderman Tobin to accept a donation from the Lions Club of Middletown in the amount of totaling $900 for summer camp scholarships.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Tobin, seconded by Alderman Kleiner. Any discussion? Roll.
Graham Cassoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderman Massey to authorize the treasurer to transfer $6,000 from the 2021 budget to cover the cost of an agreement between the city and St. Paul's Church for selected usage of their parking lot.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Massey, seconded by Alderman Kleiner. Any discussion? Roll.
Graham Cassoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderman Johnson to approve the state to convey certain portions of properties to the city at the completion of construction to the Heritage Trail and authorize the mayor to sign all documents.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Johnson, seconded by Alderman Consume. Any discussion? Roll.
Graham Cassoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez. Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderwoman Ram Cassoon to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a fence agreement with 44 James Street LLC.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Consume, seconded by Alderman Kleiner. Any discussion? Roll.
Ram Kasoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez. Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderman Kleiner to approve the Minisink Kiwanis' use of the mobile stage on Sunday, September 12th, 2021 for their annual Sweet Corn Festival.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Kleiner, second by Alderman Massey. Any discussion? Roll.
Ram Kasoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderman John Francois to authorize the mayor to sign the intermunicipal agreement between the city of Middletown and the town of Wawayanda.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman John Francois, seconded by Alderman Burr. Any discussion? Roll.
Ram Kasoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Resolution passes. Resolution sponsored by Alderman Burr to close Sunset Street from Highland Avenue to Highland Place on Saturday, July 24th, 2021, from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. for a block party.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Burr, seconded by Alderman Kleiner. Any discussion? Roll.
Ram Kasoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr.
Aye.
Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez.
Aye.
Resolution passes. That is all for new business.
Audit.
Mr. President, I move the accounts be audited, the claims be adjusted, and the city treasurer be authorized to issue warrants for their payment.
Resolution sponsored by Alderman Massey, seconded by Alderman Burr. Roll.
Ram Kasoon.
Aye.
Tobin.
Aye.
Kleiner.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
John Francois.
Aye.
Burr. Massey.
Aye.
President Rodriguez. Resolution passes.
Move for adjournment.
So moved.